Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players, uncover their stories, and discover what makes them tick. If you love guitar, music, and the backstory of people's lives, stick around. You're in the right place. Hey, this is Craig. If you're a musician, I made a special 3-question survey for you at everyonelovesguitar.com/survey. Again, musicians only. Complete this 3-question survey at everyonelovesguitar.com/survey. Alrighty now, let's do this. Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber. Welcome to another episode of Everyone Loves Guitar. Got a great Chicago blues player with us. We're with the one and only Dave Specter today. He is in case you don't know Dave, he's a guitarist, recording artist, band leader, and producer. He's been performing on the Chicago blues scene for over 30 years and first got his start playing with Steve Freund, Jimmie Johnson, Sam Lay, and Hubert Sumlin, the legendary blues band, and Sun Seals, all while he was still in his 20s. He started his own band, the Bluebirds, in 1989 and signed with Delmark Records in 1990, and he released his first album in 91 called Bluebird Blues, and he's still with Delmark Records. What is it, like 20 years later, right? 28 years, almost 30 years, man.
Yeah, almost 30 years. Hard to believe.
Yeah, that's like you might be the only guy in America on the same label for that long, man. That's great. He's also appeared on over 40 albums as a guitarist, band leader, and or producer. He's performed nationally and internationally in over 20 countries with recent appearances in France, Belgium, Chicago Blues Festival, and New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival. Some of the great artists Dave has toured and recorded with include Jack McDuff, Lurrie Bell, Snooky Pryor, Floyd McDaniel, Tad Robinson, Jesse Fortune, B.B. Odom, Kim Wilson, Boz Scaggs, Otis Clay, Pinetop Perkins, and Willie Big Eyes Smith. His truly unique guitar style combines elements of Chicago blues with influences ranging from Magic Sam, Buddy Guy, and Otis Rush to the Texas styles of T-Bone Walker, Gatemouth Brown, and the Vaughn Brothers, including bluesy jazz players like Kenny Burrell, Grant Green, and Wes Montgomery. He appears on compilation CDs with Eric Clapton, Mike Bloomfield, Buddy Guy, Junior Wells, Carlos Santana, and considers an evening at the old Buddy Guy's legend where he played on stage with Buddy and Otis Rush at the same time as one of the highlights of his career. He's a proud native Chicagoan, and he continues performing, recording, and producing blues artists with a deep passion for the music he loves. And if you don't know Dave, I'd say a great place to start is with his last album, Message in Blue. It's really good, some great soulful blues playing on there. The only thing was I didn't get any work done because all the tracks on there, I kept picking up my guitar like every track because it's like it's that album, like every track on there pretty much was like, so I got nothing done. But if I'm getting nothing done and playing guitar, like it's not like a shame or anything, right? And he was also recently inducted into the Chicago Blues Hall of Fame last month. So congratulations and thanks so much for your time, Dave. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for the kind words, Craig. Good to be with you.
Thank you, man. So you started your career as a young kid in your 20s. I know you're only 10 years older than that now, but if you could think back, how did that come about and what were you doing before you got these first opportunities?
Well, I was I started playing guitar when I was 18, and I was about to go to college down in Champaign-Urbana, Central Illinois, University of Illinois. I was in Chicago. I come from a very musical family. My brother and sister both play guitar. And I took one of my brother's guitars or one of my sister's guitars. It was a nylon string acoustic. And I started playing just for fun. I was into basketball. That was my life. And just started playing guitar for fun. And then eventually picked up an electric. I think it was like a kind of an offshoot of a Gibson Les Paul. And I just got the bug really quick. Mostly first, rock and roll kind of bit me first. The Stones, the Allman Brothers, the Dead, and Keith Richards was my first guitar hero. And then, I started getting into blues really quick after that. I had a fake ID. I was 6'4", so I could get into the Chicago blues clubs when I was a teenager. And, seeing Buddy Guy and Otis Rush and Coco Taylor, changed my life. And I went away to school. I was a pretty good student, but I was really getting into guitar, and I was finding myself, I found the passion, probably when I was 19 in college, and decided, hey, what am I doing going to class? I should be back in Chicago. And I decided I wanted to become a professional blues guitar player while I was still in college. And I moved back to Chicago and took it from there.
So this happened really quickly, like 18 months or something like that.
Yeah, it all happened within a couple years, for sure.
Do you think, because that's a pretty ballsy thing to, if you think back to, I don't know if you have kids yourself, but if you think back to an 18-year-old, that's a pretty ballsy, it's a major decision to come to, but it's even more major to actually go and implement.
Yeah, my parents loved it.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, do you think the fact that your brother and sister played, did that sort of make it more like, okay, this is a normal thing?
Well, they didn't play professionally.
Okay.
So they were just, hobbyist musicians. My brother would sit in with a lot of blues people. He knew Howlin' Wolf. He knew Junior Wells. But my parents were very, very passionate about music. My mother's a classical pianist. Her father was a Steinway piano dealer in Chicago. My father loved folk music. He loved acoustic blues and electric blues. So they, it wasn't foreign to them for one of their kids to just be in love with music. So that helped.
Yeah. And so they would sound like they were pretty supportive of what you were doing.
They weren't supportive when I dropped out of college but they thought I was just taking time off.
Right.
And so now I'm just waiting for one of those honorary degrees to come through.
There you go. Champaign-Urbana. If you're listening, there it goes. Deliver an honorary degree today, Specter. Man, for each one of these artists that you've played with, you could talk about how you got the gig and if there's any cool or interesting stories about working with them. And let's start with the late Hubert Sumlin.
Yeah, that was quite a story because I got the gig in Sam Lay's band. Some friends of mine, colleagues, were playing with Sam, and they put in a good word for me. And he heard me play, and he hired me. And the first gig he hired me for was a 2-week tour of Canada up in Calgary. And this was in the winter of,
nice.
I think, 87 maybe, or 88. No, it was 86 or 87. It was crazy because we drove straight through from Chicago to Calgary, I remember, in like January.
Nice.
I was in Wisconsin, and it was crazy. But anyway, before the tour, Sam calls me just to check in and goes, "Hey, Dave, I know you're getting ready for the tour, and I just wanted to let you know that I'm bringing another guitar player." And I was like, "Great. No problem, Sam. Whatever you want to do." And I go, "Sam, who are you bringing?" And he said, "Hubert Sumlin." And the phone dropped out of my hand, and I was in partially in shock, partially like jumping for joy because I'd never met Hubert, and I was about to go on the road with him for 2 weeks in Canada. So that was probably when I was 22 and or 23. It was amazing, and it turned into a 3-week tour. We added another week somewhere. So that's how I got the gig with Hubert, and Sam at the same time. That's
so cool, man. Very good. It's always funny, like, I don't know what your experience has been, but when when you're supposed to be doing something, like everything, the universe lines up for you, man.
Yeah, that's sometimes quite true.
Yeah. And when you're not, it fucking definitely doesn't.
Yeah.
Sun Seals. How'd you get the gig, and cool story?
So I was playing around Chicago with just as a rhythm guitar player for people like Steve Freund and Jimmie Johnson. One of my favorite gigs was playing with Johnny Littlejohn, who's kind of an unsung hero of Chicago blues guitar, amazing slide player, great singer. I was playing with guys like that, and a friend of mine named Brad Weeks was playing as the rhythm guitar player in Sun Seal's band, and he told me that he had to leave, and he asked me if I might be interested in auditioning for it because Sun was looking for somebody to replace him. So I went in and I sat in at a club in Chicago, and Sun offered me the gig, and that was really my first heavy road gig because Sun was touring a lot. We'd play New York and New England regularly. I remember doing a double bill at the Village Gate with in Greenwich Village with Johnny Clyde Copeland. We played in Central Park with Sun. Great experience. Really, was, I always tell my students how important it is to become a good rhythm guitar player as your foundation for your blues playing. And a gig like that, Sun, I had to ask Sun to give me a solo. It was really just a straight rhythm guitar gig. We'd open the sets without him, and I get to play a little, but you just learn how to back up another guitar player, and I think that's so important.
You played in Central Park. Was that part of a festival, or was that in the main? Because that's like a 500,000.
Yeah, no, it was. I mean, it was a like a summer concert series in Central Park, and they would have bands like every weekend. It wasn't like a giant show. It was maybe playing for a couple thousand people at a certain spot in the park where they'd set up a medium-sized stage.
Okay. Yeah, so it wasn't like Simon and Garfunkel in Central Park. Yeah, because I'm from New York City. I'm like, fuck, you played at Central Park. That's pretty badass. It's like 500,000 people there. Yeah, because I remember that the summer in the they used to have a lot of people there, man. Jimmie Johnson, you briefly mentioned him a minute ago. You're playing rhythm for him.
Yeah, Jimmie, who I still play with today, we're actually doing a gig together on December 12th. Jimmie on November 25th turns 90.
Wow.
Yeah, and he still sounds great, still sings great, plays great. He'll play a 3-set gig and won't complain. He's incredible. Just like an ageless musician. And I've been playing with Jimmie for over 35 years, I think.
That's wonderful, man.
So Jimmie was one of the first things I did when I came back from the University of Illinois, and I wanted to immerse myself in the Chicago blues scene. One of the first jobs I got was a doorman at a famous blues club in Lincoln Park called Blues on Halstead. And I'd work the door. I'd take people's, cover charge, and then sometimes had to throw somebody out, kind of like a bouncer, but not really. But anyway, I got to meet so many musicians doing that, and I got to hear live blues every night I worked. And Jimmie was one of the first guys I really got to know. And I remember I asked him for lessons, and he invited me over to his house and showed me a few things and started hiring me for gigs.
Wow.
So, yeah, and Jimmie, everyone knows him as a great guitar player, but he also loves playing keyboards. He loves playing piano. And he was doing gigs at a club called Lily's, also in Lincoln Park, that used to specialize in booking Chicago blues piano. You used to be able to see Pine Top there, Blind John Davis, guys like that. So Jimmie would play at Lily's, and he'd hire me to play guitar with him while he played piano.
That's pretty encouraging early on that you're going for lessons with Jimmie Johnson and he hires you. That had to tell you, like, fuck, I think I'm onto something here. Yeah.
I mean, it was amazing to me how friendly and encouraging and down to earth 99% of these legendary Chicago blues artists were. Just it was a great scene, a very welcoming scene, which was extremely helpful. And you can talk to Chicago blues players. I'm 55. I'm still like, I played with the older generation of players, and you'll ask guys like me, and almost every one of them will tell you how welcoming and encouraging they were, that a younger guy, regardless of color, wanted to play that music.
Is the scene still like that? Encouraging?
Yeah, it is. I would say it's still pretty warm and welcoming. Unfortunately, all of the great older guys, except for guys like Jimmie, there are very few left from that generation.
Sure.
So, the guys who would be considered the real traditional Chicago blues masters are guys like John Primer and Lurrie Bell. So guys like that are around, and they're also, totally cool, like the way Jimmie was to me and Hubert was to me.
That's great, man. When I listen to your playing, I hear a lot of Mike Bloomfield influences, and I'm not saying that you're mimicking Mike. It's actually far from it, but you're a really soulful player and very consistently throughout your music. You dip, at least with me, whatever you're doing really resonates with me from a soul standpoint. And there's not many people that did that consistently. And that's where, to me, this, that was one of Bloomfield's stellar qualities. He was just, every note was very passionate. He died when you were just a kid, but I was wondering, did you have any exposure to him? And is he, in fact, an influence on you?
Well, thank you. Yeah, he's definitely an influence. People used to tell me I look like Mike Bloomfield.
Because you're white? All us white guys look alike.
No, a white Jewish kid from Chicago with big hair.
Yeah, there you go.
So we had that in common. No, I definitely listened to a lot of Bloomfield. Super Session is, one of my Desert Island discs. The first Butterfield record.
Yeah.
I have friends that knew him. I know a lot of musicians. I was just talking to Peter Wolf from the Jay Giles Band the other night, and he was telling me Bloomfield stories. Charlie Musselwhite has told me Bloomfield stories. It's so tragic. He died when he was 37.
Yeah.
Just thing. And he had such a prolific career at such a young age. But yeah, Bloomfield was, he was a musicologist. I mean, that guy studied the history of blues as well as anyone I've ever heard of. And he was also, the key to me for playing blues is the feeling. You have to have the feeling, you have to have the soul, you have to have the passion. And Bloomfield had that oozing out of him. And that's, that's the main reason I play that's how I express myself. It's a very important part of who I am because I can express myself in a very meaningful way. And hopefully it comes out soulfully and hopefully it comes out with passion, because that's definitely when I'm on and when I'm feeling it, that's what I'm feeling more than anything.
Yeah, well, it does for sure. You're originally from Chicago. What was your childhood like growing up? Sounds like very musical.
Yeah, I grew up in a small house, very middle class, a neighborhood on the northwest side of Chicago called Hollywood Park. Like I said, my family is all very musical. There was always music on in my house, mostly classical music. My parents were both passionate classical music fans. My mom's still alive, still has a piano in her apartment.
That's great.
My older brother and sister, my older brother plays blues harp, plays bluegrass banjo, plays guitar. And he was really the first person that turned me on to blues and through recordings and through stories. I mean, he would come home, he's 9 years older than me, and he would say, "Hey, I just saw this guy named Howlin' Wolf, and I was hanging out with him, and I bought him a bottle of peppermint schnapps, and I'm going to see Coco Taylor tomorrow." And then my brother and sister would go see Muddy Waters, and they'd tell me about it, and then I'd listen to their records. And I remember a radio show in Chicago on this classical station, a very famous classical station called WFMT, and they have a Saturday night show that's still on. It's like a musical variety show called the Midnight Special. And I remember hearing Big Bill Brunsey and Lead Belly and Muddy Waters when my parents were listening to that show every Saturday night. And I had never heard anything like that. I'd never heard those sounds and that much soul and that much power in music. And it moved me when I was a kid. And it almost scared me because it was so powerful. And I'm fortunate that music touched me at a very young age. So, the blues bug hit me early. I just kind of got it even, 10 years before I started playing. And that's, thanks to my family.
I want to just ask you a question about what you said, or two questions, actually. You said it almost scared you. So if you could explain what you meant by that. And also, what was because you were exposed to classical music, folk music, what was it about the blues? Like, what was the hook there? That's what did it for you?
Well, yeah, it was the power. I mean, it almost scared me just because it was so powerful and so deep. I was like, oh my, I mean, I listened to a lot of classical. I didn't particularly like it. I played a little classical piano as a kid, but I much preferred when my brother was listening to the Doors or the Allman Brothers or the Dead, or, I remember the Woodstock soundtrack being an album that I would hear all the time. I much preferred rock and roll, but when I heard blues singers and guitar players, it just it was so much more real and so much more heavy than anything else. And I still feel that way. I mean, I listen to everything. I listen to a lot of jazz. I love reggae. I love rock and roll still. I love, I have a club outside of Chicago. We have lots of singer-songwriters, and we have bluegrass. And I really have a pretty big ears, pretty critical ears, but still great blues moves me more than any kind of music, by far.
You're talking about the Dead. It's interesting. I've interviewed close to 400 players. I think you might be the second guy that mentioned the Dead. It's really interesting because they were such a, even if guys our age, there's such a niche. It's like with the Dead, you're either all in, or not. There's not like casual Dead listeners.
That's true. Yeah, I was turned on to the Dead. I went to my first show probably in 78 when I was 15.
Wow.
And my brother and sister were big Dead heads, and they turned me on to them, and I still love them. And it really frustrates me when people diss them. And there are a lot of guys that I know on the blues scene that kind of, mock them. And they just haven't listened to the right stuff. Because in my opinion, Bob and Jerry, one of the two greatest, two guitar bands ever. And their interplay still blows me away. And, there's never going to be another lead guitar player like Jerry Garcia. And Bob's rhythm playing, I find hugely influential. I mean, I love the way he plays rhythm. It's so intricate and original and tasty, and the way he and Jerry would kind of intertwine their parts. I mean, Jerry was almost always playing lead, but Jerry's rhythmic parts when he was singing combined with or behind Bob's singing still really move me.
And it's interesting, their popularity is still so strong that there are multiple Dead tribute bands that are making that are doing very well, making good money as a Dead tribute band. Not one, there's like multiple of them all around the country.
Oh yeah. I've seen them.
What were some of the lower points or the bigger obstacles that you've had to deal with over your career, and how did you manage to get through them? Either business, music related, personal, whatever you care to share.
Well, when I started my own band, it was, it takes a lot of work and a lot of hustle. And sometimes it's hard to, score gigs. There's so much competition. There's so many blues bands. And I mean, I've been in Chicago my whole career, and there are more blues players here than anywhere in the world. There are also more places to play than anywhere in the world. But,
yeah,
I'm a musician. I'm an artist. I'm not a terribly astute businessman, and I'm not a real good hustler. So, just keeping steady gigs in the book has always been a challenge. And before I was, doing well, it was a struggle. I'd have to work part-time jobs at record stores. I've always taught, given guitar lessons, but it's a tough way to make a living. Fortunately, it's worked out, but there were plenty of years where I had self-doubts, and I was like wishing, I had kind of sometimes wondered, wow, what would it have been like if I had gone to medical school like my friends and, had the big house in the suburbs, and, you kind of, the grass is always greener, always comes up, but then you realize eventually that you did the right thing.
Very cool. I mean, I want to know, I'm curious, what are some of the best concerts you've seen? Because you've probably seen some great shows, I have a feeling.
Wow. There have been so many I've been seeing. I was just talking to a famous rock and roll photographer, Paul Natkin, last night, who actually used to tour with the Stones and Keith Richards. And he brought up Patti Smith. Patti Smith was the first rock concert I ever saw in 1975 at the Aragon Ballroom in Chicago.
Wow. That's a famous place, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I saw Dylan there. I saw so many shows there. I used to actually work security when I was in high school for a famous Chicago concert promoter, Jam Productions. And I used to work at the Aragon. I used to work at a nasty place called the Rockford Speedway in Rockford, Illinois. I remember I worked on stage for the Black Sabbath and Blue Oyster Cult double bill.
Black and Blue tour. Yeah, man. I remember that.
Yeah. But, I remember seeing I saw Bowie during the Let's Dance tour without Stevie Ray. Stevie Ray had already left Bowie's band, but seeing Carlos Alomar and Earl Slick together with Bowie was
wow.
pretty incredible. I've been seeing the Stones probably since the early 80s. You know, I'm a huge Mick Taylor fan.
Oh, yeah.
I got to see a John Mayall Blues Breakers reunion show. I think it was the early 80s, maybe the late 70s, where he had Mick Taylor and John McVie in Chicago. I got to open for Peter Green when he was just starting his national comeback tour. I think that was in 99.
What was that like?
It was bittersweet. You know, I'm a huge, passionate Peter Green, early Fleetwood Mac fan. I think he's one of the best ever. And, you know, seeing him trying to make a comeback was moving, and but he was in just such a difficult place, and he wasn't playing terribly well, and it was kind of like hearing someone who had forgotten how to play who was trying to learn again.
Yeah.
You know, and it was kind of heartbreaking in a way. But I still am a huge fan, always will be.
You see that there's a really good documentary on Netflix or on Amazon, one of those fantastic, and it was it's bittersweet watching it, because I mean it, and I've talked to other guys who've actually been in the studio with him around that period of time or even later, and everybody said the same thing, because he's, you know, maybe not as lucid as you'd like.
Right. But yeah, I mean, I've seen so many great shows. I mean, I'm a partner in a live music venue outside of Chicago in Evanston, Illinois. It's called Space. Evanston Space stands for the Society for the Preservation of Arts and Culture in Evanston. Anyway, it's a great little listening room, about a 240 capacity, and we're on our 10th year now.
That's awesome.
And, you know, we've had people like Alan Toussaint and Dr. John, and we have 3 nights coming up with Nick Lowe. Hubert played there. Pine Top played there. We've got a killer blues show coming up with John Primer and Billy Boy Arnold as a special guest.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, we do blues pretty regularly, but we do everything. And we've had Todd Rundgren. We got Dave Davies from the Kings coming.
What's he doing?
I saw Dave. We had Dave a few years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and I really didn't know what to expect from a Dave Davies solo show, but I loved it, and I was really impressed. I really, you know, he's not as, I mean, Ray Davies is one of the greatest rock and roll singer-songwriters ever, with just this inimitable voice. But Dave's singing was actually pretty cool. It actually sounded a little like Ray's, and he did a lot of cool Kings tunes, so I loved it.
Is he with a band or just like him solo?
Yeah.
Or?
Oh, no,
okay.
He's got a band.
That's really cool.
It's a great rock show, yeah.
Do you know, when Hubert was touring, do you know Sean Chambers? He was like his MD at one time.
I don't know Sean, no.
Okay. He's a blues guy. He's big down here in Florida.
Okay.
Just curious. He sort of got his start with Hubert, and he became his MD, and that was like mentor and stuff in his early career.
Hey, speaking of Florida, I produced an album by an artist who's in Sarasota named Billy Seward, who is a killer, like soul blues singer-songwriter, singer-guitar player. And he came to Chicago and used my band, and we recorded it at Delmark Studios. Jimmie Johnson actually guests on a track.
That's very cool, man.
Yeah,
Billy
the album's
Seward.
called Seward, Seward, yeah.
What's the album?
South Shore.
Everybody check that out. Billy Seward's South Shore. Let's talk gear for a few minutes, man. I've seen you on a lot of YouTube videos. You got a lot of really cool Gibsons. And what's your your go-to guitar, and what other 2 guitars would round out your top 3?
I became a Fender Jazzmaster player probably about 10 years ago. When I started out, I was really into Strats, playing mostly maple neck Strats. And then I switched to Gibsons. I was playing a 175 for a while. I got into Epiphone Rivieras with mini humbuckers for many years, inspired by Steve Freund and Otis Rush and Magic Sam. And when I found the Jazzmaster, just by chance, it kind of reminded me a Strat, but it almost felt like more of like a jumbo Strat. I'm 6'4", I'm a big guy, and it felt like a longer scale neck and a bigger body, and it had kind of a P90-ish kind of pickup. So I was getting like almost like this fat Fender tone, which I really have grown to love. And I started getting into the whammy bar a lot, mostly on chords. And I have a few of the classic player model Jazz Masters that I love. I put Lawler pickups in a couple. I have one with Lindy Fralin pickups. The one that I recorded Message in Blue with, most of that record is done on a classic player Jazz Master with stock pickups.
Really? Because I listened to that record. Like I said, it was great. I was curious about I'm shocked, man.
Yeah, the back cover has a picture of me and Otis Clay, and I'm holding a Jazz Master. And I did one song, Same Old Blues, the Freddie King cover.
Great.
I play a Gibson ES 137 Custom, which is a model that I love. It's excuse me.
What is that? The 137 Custom? I don't even know what that is.
Do you remember the 135s?
Sure.
Single cutaway. And they when they originally came out, they had two P100s. The 137 Custom is kind of a fancier version of that. So it's semi-hollow body, but it's a little thicker than a 335. It's got the center block. These have humbuckers, and they have the Veritones, like the 340.
Oh, yeah.
And they have beautiful bound headstocks, ebony boards. So and you could get them, 10 years ago for $1,500 used, for $1,700, and they're beautiful guitars. I have three of them. So on Message in Blue, I play the 137 on Same Old Blues. But I always wanted to have a 345. I got a 60s reissue, the Memphis series, a few years ago. I've been playing that.
Do you use the Veritone?
A little bit. It's funny. I love the sounds of it, like when I'm alone playing by myself. But when I get on stage and I'm in a gig situation and I use the Veritone tones, I find that you kind of lose some output. And it's kind of challenging to like keep a consistent volume when you're using the Veritone.
Man, that's what almost everybody says. They're like, everybody was inspired by Freddie King, and man, I couldn't wait to get it. And then it's like, yeah, yeah, maybe. Yeah, I like the guitar, the Veritone, not so much.
Actually, I think BB used it more than Freddie back in the day. You listen to some early BB recordings or even the 60s recordings, and you hear all these cool tones that BB's getting, and I think those are Veritone options that he used.
Interesting. What do the 137s go for now? I mean, do they still make them, or they're only older ones?
No, I don't think they make them. I think if you were to look on Reverb or eBay, you could still find them probably for around $2. Because I don't think they ever really caught on. And they're if you're looking for a semi-hollow body that kind of has a three, I describe it sometimes as a 335 or a 345 meets a 175. So
it's like that's what I was thinking. So it's like a 335 with a single cutaway, and then you have the Veritone.
But it's a little thicker body.
Yeah, I'm gonna check that out, man. That sounds like something I'd be interested in. What is the Classic Player Series? How is that different on the Jazz Master than this American standard Fender Jazz Master? Right.
Well, I think old Jazz Masters were kind of infamous for certain issues with their bridges and issues maybe with the tremolo bar. So I think the Classic Player Series it uses more of a straight tunematic bridge. They use a different scale on the neck, I believe. I'm not really good at talking technical about guitars. They put medium jumbo frets on them, which I love. I'm a big fret guy, and I like big jumbo frets. It's an expensive habit sometimes. So they kind of just made some basic improvements on it, and they put hotter pickups in it. And those are under $1,000, and I think they're great guitars for the money. People sometimes diss Mexican Fenders, but I have a few Mexican Jazz Masters and a couple Mexican Strats that I love.
How thick or thin are those necks? Because I'm thinking you're 6'4", man. I'm 5'9". This is probably not be.
They're medium. They're not
big,
not too chunky. No, they're just like a nice, comfortable medium feel neck.
Like a Strat neck, maybe.
Yeah. Like I mean, there's so many variations on Strat necks. It's definitely not like a 50s Strat neck. I would say more like a 60s C shape.
That's awesome. Ever sell a guitar you wish you can get back?
Hell yeah. Yeah. Guitars and amps, I've sold some, my main guitar for many years was a 57 Strat refin, that I got probably right about when I was making my first record in 1990. And I had that for over 10 years. And I sold it to a friend of mine. The guy that fixed me up with my ex-wife.
He did you wrong all the different ways, man.
Yeah. So,
wait, your first ex-wife or your second ex-wife?
Yeah. Exactly. My next ex-wife.
You know what, man? It's funny you said that. I've been with my wife 26 years, but I was married when I was a kid. And I'll never forget, man, a buddy of mine, the first time I was out with Ann, he goes, you realize you're going to be his next ex-wife. It's 26 years. I don't think there's a high probability or any chance of that, but it was just funny when you reminded me that. I haven't heard that in a long time.
Yeah, that's probably my biggest guitar regret. I've sold some beautiful amps over the years. Most regrettably, a couple Blackface Vibroluxes.
Oh, wow.
And when I first started playing out, I got a Blackface Super. And to give you an idea how prices have changed, I think it was 1985. You could buy a Blackface Super for $200.
Holy crap.
That was the going rate. You could buy a Blackface Deluxe for $250, maybe $300. So I had a number of Blackface Supers. I had a Blackface Deluxe that my bass player has that I sold to him for, I think, $350. One of my Blackface Vibroluxes is now one of the main studio amps at Delmark, so I feel good about that. Although I still want to buy it back, Delmark, if you're listening.
That's right, man. Hook a brother up.
Yeah, that's probably my that right now would probably be the number one amp on my list that I don't have. I have a Blackface Deluxe and a Blackface Super from the 60s, but I would love to get my hands on another Vibrolux. But the good ones are selling for, $2,500.
Yeah, $2,500, $3,000. That's what I've been told.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that Super Sessions would have been one of your Desert Island discs. What would have been the other? What would be the other two, just for today? That could change anytime.
Kenny Burrell, Midnight Blue is definitely. It would be hard for me to pick two or three. I could definitely give you 10. Yeah, Kenny Burrell, Midnight Blue is one of my all-time favorite guitar records. Kind of combines jazz and blues in a perfect way. I'd have to say Magic Sam's West Side Soul, Junior Wells' Hoodoo Man Blues. An Otis Rush record would have to be in there, either as Cobra Sessions or Right Place, Wrong Time. I love the Live in Japan record that Delmark put out that Jimmie Johnson plays rhythm guitar on. A lot of those albums mean a lot to me because that's really how I learned how to play more than any other way, was playing along with records like that.
Is that still possible, do you think?
Yes, for people to learn that way?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great way to learn and a great way to practice.
I asked you that because there's loads of guitar players listening, and I think there's a lot of, man, I think you just got to play. Whatever you want to do, just do something, move forward. But I think a lot of people feel, well, unless I have this gear or unless I have that teacher or this YouTube video, and I just wanted to hear your slant on it because I happen to agree with you. Just do something that makes you feel good and that you...
Well, I think especially for, my philosophy, like I said earlier, is to work as hard as you can on becoming a good rhythm guitar player. And I think playing along with records as a rhythm guitar player is a great practice technique. And I wish, when I was learning how to play, and I'm still learning how to play, but in a different way. When I was first starting out, I mean, YouTube is such an amazing resource.
Oh God, yeah.
I mean, just to not only to play, but not only just to listen and to watch. You can watch, any guitar player you love. You can watch videos of them just about, and it's wonderful and incredible.
Most important things that you've learned about yourself throughout career and life experiences.
That music is really one of the most important forms of expression for me, and it really represents a large part of who I am. I think that's most importantly, what I've learned over the years is that, when I play, that's who I am, kind of, as big a part of me as any part of me.
Would you say that's when you're in your most natural comfort zone when you're playing?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. That's when I feel, if I'm playing well, especially, that's when I feel the best about myself.
That's great. 3 more questions, man, and I appreciate your time. Any hobbies or interests outside of music, Dave?
I'm a big sports fan. I used to be a big basketball player. I love Chicago sports teams, and I'm also still somewhat athletic. I live on the lakefront in Chicago, so during the summer I'm out riding my bike. I need to read more. This damn internet takes up so
Nobody
much
reads,
time.
man.
I used to be a big reader, so that's something I would love to get back into as a hobby.
And I had Trubisky in my fantasy team. He won he won for me a couple of weeks ago, so I'm all for Chicago right now.
All right. Yeah, they're looking good.
Yeah, they are looking pretty good, man. Favorite place you've traveled? Been all over, man.
I'm fortunate that I get to play in Europe a lot. I just got back from France. I played in northern France near Dunkirk and spent a couple days in Paris where I saw Buddy Guy, which was pretty cool.
That is
just
cool.
Last minute, his rhythm guitar player, Rick Hall, hits me up on Facebook, and he saw one of my posts from France, and he goes, "Hey, man, you still here? We're in town. Why don't you come out?" So I went and saw him in Paris last night I was there.
Dude, that's so cool. You know what's cool about Buddy, man? I saw him in the early 80s at the Beacon Theater on 72nd Street and Broadway. Amazing. And then I've seen him like 5 years ago here in Tampa with my son, who didn't exist in the 80s, of course, and he was still amazing. It's like it, and I've seen him a few times. It's always weird though. You never know which Buddy Guy is showing up. Are you getting the soulful, mellow Buddy Guy, which is not often? Are you getting the motherfucker Buddy Guy? Guy, maybe he had a couple of drinks before he got on stage or something. But it's always a great show, man. I've never been disappointed at a Buddy Guy show of maybe 5 concerts I've seen,
Yeah, that's cool. He still just lights up the stage like no one else.
Absolutely. And he's just so comfortable he's very much in his element.
Yeah, he's 82 now.
Amazing, right? Yeah.
So my favorite country in Europe is probably Spain. I love playing in Spain.
Why is that?
I just love the vibe there, the lifestyle, the being on the Mediterranean, and there's so many guitar players there.
Really?
There, think about Spanish guitar and flamenco and just great electric guitar players. And I speak Spanish, so that helps.
Oh, that is very cool. Yeah. Last question, Dave. What do you think has been the biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years? And how much of that change has been intentional and deliberate, and how much has just been a function of aging?
Well, I'd probably say that I used to be a lot more introverted and quiet, and then I've kind of, personality-wise, probably opened up more over the years. Being a performer, being a club owner, you kind of have to be. You don't have to be, but it kind of brings out a more outgoing side of me. So I'd say I've seen a change there. And then musically, You know, one of the things that keeps me going, I've been playing now for almost 35 years professionally, is just the fact that I'm still learning. I feel like I'm still growing. I feel like my playing's still developing. And, you know, I'm writing now for a new album, and that's kind of a cool place to be when you're writing and you're coming up with new ideas and they work. That can be really fulfilling. So that keeps me going and inspires me, and, you know, keeps me out of the dark places.
That's great, man. And I think that's inspiring to others that, you know, you've opened up more over the last 10 years. I think if everybody probably did that a little bit, you know, we may have less stress in the world. Who knows? Hey, listen, man, I can't thank you enough for your time. I want to tell people, and you could talk a little bit about your clubs, but you're going to be in Switzerland in the spring.
Yeah, I'm playing in Basel, Switzerland, a series that a promoter puts on called Groove Now. It's a wonderful series. They book some great people. I just saw Anson Funderburg. Excuse me. I just saw Anson Funderburg on their schedule. My friend, great guitar player who's from California, who lives in Germany now, named Alex Schultz, who used to play with Rod Piazza and William Clark. He just played their series with Tad Robinson and Daryl Newlish, a couple of great singers. So I'm playing that with a kind of a rising star on the Chicago blues scene named Corey Dennison, who's also on Delmark. So we're doing that show the last weekend in March.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Where do you post your gigs for people who want to come check you out and see you play?
I'm not terribly great about keeping my website up to date, but if you go to Dave Specter, SPECTER, DaveSpecter.com, I've got a lot of gig news on that page that, like I said, I try to keep up to date. I got a cool show coming up December 12th at Space, celebrating Jimmie Johnson's 90th birthday party. I do a series there quarterly called Dave Specter's Adventures in Guitar. And I know you just had Bobby Broom on. Bobby was one of my guests for that show a couple of years ago.
That's great.
Yeah, it's a cool series where I get to, you know, have interplay with other guitar players. I had Greg Koch was a guest recently. A lot of great players I get to play with, which I'm very fortunate to be able to do.
I had Greg on the show, and Greg is the guy that more other top guitarists have mentioned to me as, like, I wish I could be as disciplined as Greg Koch than anybody else. I mean, consistently I hear that from everybody. You know? Yeah,
he's also one of the funniest guitar players on the planet.
Oh, he's funny as hell. And you know, it was interesting. I said to him, I said, what, you know, tell me something about yourself that people like would have their mind blown. He goes, well, the biggest thing is, like, everybody sees me or meets me and they see me at NAMM. We're like, hey, let's go party. He goes, I don't drink. I'm like in bed early. You know, he's like, he's got 5 kids. That's all he's about, his kids. That's it, man. His family, and kids, and guitar, you know, in that order. And, you know, everybody thinks he's a party animal because he is so out there and funny. So, Hey, let me talk about your clubs. Evanston Space, in their 10th year. Where do people find information on that?
Evanston Space, the word space, evanstonspace.com is our website. It's a very cool club. We do probably 300 shows a year. We just had 2 nights with Jimmy Vaughn over the late summer, which was a real thrill. So many of my favorite guitar players that played there, guys like Duke Robillard, Ronnie Earl, Hubert. And we also do, you know, everything from jazz. We just had Schofield, which, you know, Schofield's such a great guy and such an amazingly inspiring player. He had Bill Stewart on drums, who completely blew my mind, one of the greatest drummers I've ever seen. So it's exciting. I get to, you know, help curate, program music I love, and our customers love it. And we also have a recording studio there. I recorded my second to last album, Spectified, there. So it's 20 minutes from home. So that's been great.
That's awesome, man. And you also have another club you're involved with, the Blue Nocturne.
Yeah. Nicholas Tremulis, who's pretty well known on the Chicago music scene. Great guy, great musician, and I are partnering with a club in Chicago's Wicker Park neighborhood. and we're starting to do like monthly shows there, a couple shows a month, just getting started. So stay tuned for more cool shows coming up at the Blue Nocturne in Chicago.
Awesome. So everybody that's in the Chicago area passing through, check out Evanston Space. It's EVANSTON, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Evanston Space and the Blue Nocturne. Those are clubs that Dave's involved with. If you see him there, say hello. And also, he's got a new album that will be coming out hopefully in the spring. And hopefully he'll be coming on here to talk about it. And thank you for telling me that it's Basel, Switzerland, because I have this bootleg, like one of the best bootlegs I own of Dire Straits. And I always, dumb me from New York, Basel, Switzerland.
Yeah. I think we're both wrong. I think it's Basel.
Basel. Okay. Well, thank you for educating me on that, because it sounds a lot better than Basil. Man, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. Everybody check out, if you're not familiar with Dave Specter, check out Message in Blue, his last album, and his last name is spelled Specter, Specter. He's a really great blues artist and a very cool guy, as you can hear. Any final words of wisdom?
No, man. Thanks for having me, Craig. Good luck with your podcast. I'm actually starting one myself. I actually have a couple episodes up. It's called Dave Specter's Blues from the Inside Out.
Awesome. And is it on iTunes? Can people find it on iTunes?
Not yet on iTunes. I need to edit a few more episodes. I actually have an episode that I need to edit with Albert Lee. And I have one where I did a joint interview with Corky Siegel and Sam Lay. But there are a couple episodes up, including Toronzo Cannon, who's on Alligator Records. But yeah, just go to the website if you want to see my attempt at doing what you're doing so well. Dave Specter's Blues from the Inside Out.
There you go. Check it out, everybody. Dave Specter's Blues from the Inside Out. I'm sure it's going to be awesome. All right, brother. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this interview, please share it with a friend on your social media channels. We appreciate your support. Thanks again to Dave Specter for spending time with us. Please check Dave out online and at his shows. And if you're in Basel or Switzerland in the spring, go see him, because he's a great performer. Make sure you go to everyonelovesguitar.com, sign up to get on our newsletter list so you and I can connect. And most important, remember that happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. Thanks for listening. I'm out. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.